Welcome to the latest Jimmy Brews interview, and thanks for tuning in. I'm James Marinos, beer blogger and enthusiast at Jimmy Brews, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Greg Blesson, Managing Director at Mad Squirrel. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing very well, thank you, James. Very, very good.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you for taking the time to catch up with me today. And so really, I just wanted to actually kick off with a few bits about Mad Squirrel. You guys have got a pretty extensive operation. So not only have you got the brewery and obviously a great line of releases to go alongside that, but bars and tap rooms in pretty much everywhere from St Albans all the way down through Amersham, Wickham, Burko and Chesham as well. I've noticed you've got a craft beer cruiser as well for events. That's quite a lot. So how did you get it all started?
Well, the very quick version is that we started in Hertford.
Oh wow!
In North Hertfordshire, and the original brewer who was involved was a very quiet, bright man called Gary, and he basically was a fantastic brewer, and by his own admission, not a natural salesman or marketeer, because he was quite, quite reserved, but a lovely guy. And so myself and my business partner, who's from Zimbabwe, and we've been business partners in the wine industry for a lot of years. We love craft beer, just like you, and we decided to discuss it with Gary, and we said let's try something and let's get something going, because at that time Gary was just experimenting. He was sort of running a tiny cottage industry business. So that's what he was doing. And that was, I guess that was the start of the idea, not the business. I must stress that. It wasn't a business. And we then decided to launch Mad Squirrel. We originally started the business off as under the name of Red Squirrel. And we just decided to change that almost instantaneously. We should have done it from the beginning, but that's a long story. And the shortened version is we changed it and we launched Mad Squirrel back in 2010. And the whole name, the whole concept and the ideas was not through a typical marketing agency that probably you and I would recognize. It was literally me putting a bunch of young people, about 7 of them in a room for one day, that came up with the name, the branding, the concept. So at least I'm honest enough to say it's not always about me. It was about a group of people, and mainly young people. So that's how we started the whole idea. And what we wanted to do was basically sort of being typically home counties brewery, because obviously you're in this beautiful part of Hertfordshire, but a lot of the breweries around here are very good, but they're very more home county-ish.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. As I said, I drink plenty of a certain local brewery, so a fan of that brewery. But we wanted to do something that was more inspirational, probably a little bit more innovative, have more imagination to it, and that's what we did. And so that's really how Mad Squirrel evolved, and we've managed to do a lot of business in, I guess, much further afield than typical breweries around Hertfordshire that tend to stay within their own domain, i.e. around Hertfordshire and a bit of Bucks. And we've gone, and then what we decided to do, I'm making this a shortened version, we just decided that because around here was very traditional, extremely traditional, and again, I'm trying to be polite here, it was more about probably people of my age group than the sort of 22 to 42 type category demographics. And really what we wanted was to target those people, that category in general. So what we did was we said, how can we get access to a bunch of counties, i.e. Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire, that are very traditional, and how can we change the mindset? Because all these people are in London drinking you know, fantastic beer in London from some edgy breweries and different breweries. And we sort of like to be part of that scene. How do we do it and persuade people who would, who basically wouldn't know the difference between necessarily a brown bitter and American pale? And to be fair to those individuals, why would they? Because what you tend to drink around here is traditional style beer. So that's what we did. And so we opened Chesham, and the idea was to bring modern craft beer to a bit more of the of Hertfordshire and Bucks, and just to see whether people would buy into it. And it was as simple as that, and that's what we did. And on the back of our original tiny enterprise in Hertford, we moved the brewery to this area, and we built a second brewery. This time it was a brand new brewery, and
is this
it was
the one that's located sort of outside Potton End? Is that?
No, it was in Potton End. We did actually have an office somewhere else, but the short version is that we built a second brewery basically on the same farm that we're currently, this beautiful farm that we're on, which by the way is great and has a wonderful infrastructure. It's why we have our own borehole here, everything, so it's really good. And so we built that second brewery. It was new. It was what we call a 12-barrel kit, so quite small. And that's really was part of the journey, sort of developing things. And obviously subsequently we've gone on to build a state-of-the-art brewery that we have now. And we're able to do like amazing styles of beer. And we've got a very sophisticated team. And I know that sounds like I'm praising, but we do have a very good team all round, not just in the brewing, because just being a brewer is no good in this business. You need to be multifaceted to be reasonably successful. And so that's what we've done. So that's really the journey really from 2010. So really more conceptual ideas, experimental, to if you like, a brewery that's based in the Chilterns, but fundamentally is very much more in kin with the London scene and the Manchester scene and the Scottish scene.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's really insightful. As I actually, from what you said about introducing beers that I think has possibly been more familiar inside the Scottish scene and the Manchester scene, and I think maybe started in London a few years after perhaps it had in other regions of the UK. I think there's absolutely no other brewery around here, in my opinion, that does quite what you're doing, including beers like, actually, we just mentioned before we kicked off the interview, things like Smolder. And I think one of the first beers I'd tried outside of Sumo as well is Hoodwinked, which...
white stout, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an incredible beer. It really is. It stands above so many other beers I've tried that are similar or trying to do something similar, which I think is probably down to the process of how you make your beer. I know, obviously, we'd spoken about the term craft beer itself. For you, can you, I mean, as an education to myself as well here, as well as anyone listening, what is the process that you'd follow to develop proper craft beer? How does that work? And actually, how does the process that Mad Squirrel use and follow make you stand apart from others?
Well, that's a good question. Some good points there, James. The most important thing really is to focus on is oxygen. So what you want in beer is you don't want oxygen. That's the key. Now, just to give you an example about the two processes, perhaps a slight educational thing. So if you're a traditional brewery, again, as I've said many times, nothing wrong with traditional beer, it's great. But single fusion traditional breweries tend to have a straightforward process when it comes to mashing. So for example, if you're one of those more traditional breweries, you will have a English, Scottish, Welsh single infusion brewery what does that mean in layman's terms? Well, that means that you basically mash in once. And that means that you mash at a temperature. And that temperature effectively cannot be altered. So once you've mashed in on a single infusion, that is it. So you may say, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, let me explain. So what will happen in that single infusion is you'll be producing, for example, let's just say you're looking to produce a bitter, a traditional English bitter. Again, nothing wrong with that. Great product.
Yeah.
We do one ourselves. But fundamentally what will happen is your mash in, it's at the same temperature. You can't change that temperature, not really, that's it. And what will happen is during the course of the mashing in process, the husks and the grain will float to the surface. And then below that surface, you will have obviously liquid. So what happens there? Well, what happens is that the husks, the grain, the mash, you can call it lots of different things, will be exposed to oxygen, which means you are likely to get some oxidization to that product, which means that the beer will not taste necessarily as fresh as, for example, a different process that a lot of super premium craft breweries use. I'm talking more of the top end breweries we use. So at Mad Squirrel, we don't use a single infusion. We use something called a stepped mashing process. And again, what does that mean? Again, it's pretty easy to explain. Stepped mashing or the step mashing process means that you mash in different steps, strangely enough. And what happens is that you can control your temperatures.
Right.
You can completely control the temperatures. So first and foremost, you're in more control of that base liquid. That's the bottom line, which means you are going to reduce the amount of oxygen that gets into that liquid. And you don't want oxygen. I must stress this. You don't want oxygen. So
baking.
Yes. So those are the two processes. Now, I like to use an analogy, but before I use an analogy, I also just want to talk about why also a stepped mashing process is better. So in a stepped mashing process at Mad Squirrel, what we're able to do is we're able to agitate that liquid, which means what we're fundamentally doing again is we're beating out any oxygen. So is there any oxygen? We're getting rid of it by agitating. Now, you don't do that in a single infusion. You just don't do it.
Right.
So what you end up with is, if you can imagine A and B, there's nothing wrong with A, I must stress this, and there's B where Mad Squirrel is and more super premium craft brewers tend to fit. But you've got one with almost no oxygen, one with some oxygen exposure, which is not necessarily good for beer. So the way that it's been explained to me, as I said to you at the beginning of this interview, I'm a very simple soul. I do like very simple analogies. And so
me too. Don't worry about that.
Oh, good. So I'm not alone. So my brewing director, who's a very, very intelligent man, don't tell him that though, because he might grow his ego a bit, but he's very bright. But he also quite likes simple analogies. So the analogy that we often discuss between each other is apples. So let me explain. If you are doing a single infusion, so remember, just to reiterate, single traditional type brewing, again, nothing wrong with it. What will happen is that, as I mentioned earlier on, the husk and grain will float. So if you can imagine that's an apple, just imagine it's not grain, it's an apple.
Bobbing.
The apple will float to the surface and the apple will be exposed to oxygen. So what happens to apples when they're exposed to oxygen and they've been cut in half? It's a question for you, James. You should know that.
Yeah, it will decay or ferment.
Will go brown.
Yes.
So because the oxygen is in contact with that apple. If you're doing a stepped mashing process, the apple does not appear on the surface. So therefore, the apple does not go brown. because it's not exposed to oxygen. So the simple thing to think about is the husks on the grain on a single infusion is exposed to oxygen, and in a stepped mashing process, the grain is not, or to a very high level not. So what you end up with is effectively a product that has had, that's in the stepped mashing process, i.e. the Mad Squirrel way.
Yeah.
You're getting a product that literally has almost zero oxygen. So if you talk to my brewing director, he always, and this is absolutely true, he talks all the time about, let's make sure that we have almost zero oxygen within the process. And that is why the kit that we currently have, just going back to your original question, one of the fundamentals, and this is a different point to lots of other even super premium micros that we compete with. Not all, obviously, kits are produced the same. I mean, this is why you get breweries that do extreme New England IPAs, and people think that it's because the brewer, for example, is more talented than the person that's perhaps doing a more traditional style. Well, the answer is that is not true. It just means that they've produced their kit in such a way that allows them to put stacks of oats and so on and so forth in. So the kit is critical. So what we've done here is that we have created and designed a kit literally from start to finish that reduces the oxygen exposure. That is almost the bottom line. And we designed it. So it's not like every kit is like that. It just means that we've gone over the top in that element. So then what you're able to do, as I've been told many, many times, is that when we did this kit, we were adamant that we wanted to produce world-class Pilsner and Helles, which I think we do, and we wanted to do occasionally wheat beers. Now, if you're going to do those particular styles to a really, really high standard, one is you need to do step mashing. One is you need to have the ability to agitate in very simple terms, your wort.
Right.
And you have to make sure that you go through these processes. If you've got a single infusion, it's not impossible to make lager or a high quality Pilsner, but it's not ideal because you're likely to get something not of the standard. So again, even if our brewing director was working on a single infusion and was trying to make a Pilsner, and he is rather good at it because he's German,
yes,
he would probably struggle to make. He probably could make a fist of it, to be honest, because he's very good at it. So those are, in my book, the fundamental differences between what we do and what a number of other breweries do, to be fair, in this country that are doing really super premium craft beer. Again, that word, but that's what happens, versus a traditional brewery that perhaps is just focusing on, styles like, a bitter or what have you, and just traditional style products. And then probably the last thing to say is despite all of that, there's still a lot of technical things that are required when you're doing these types of processes. And that's probably where the competence comes in from the brewer. So quite often, I'm being slightly contradicting myself here, but I would say that you need to have a level of sophistication in brewing to be able to do the process I've just talked about, like step mashing and so on and so forth. So that's what we try and do. So that's basically it, James.
Conscious of time here for you as well, and thank you so much for giving such a detailed, such detail on the brewing process itself.
No problem.
It sounds as
make it shortly.
Just as much of a science as it is an art and a passion.
Yes. Yeah.
Onto news though. Obviously, you mentioned this new dipper that you're making at the moment.
Yeah.
I think probably on the hearts and minds of everyone up and down the country at the moment is the reopening of pubs, bars, and everywhere else for that matter. going on behind the scenes, are there any sort of new exciting announcements that you've got in plan for reopening? And furthermore, do you have any ideas as to when you might be?
Well, obviously, we can't really open. We can open technically 2 sites because we have the right permits, but the other 4 sites we can't open. But in terms of sort of general news, I think the interesting thing to get across really for this point of obviously this conversation is that I think we've been one of the well, let's try and put this diplomatically, not necessarily we're the only one, of course not, but we're certainly, I'd say we're one of those breweries that have been in the lower percentages that have decided to just get on with things and try and carry on as normal. So what we've done is a lot of breweries have closed down, they've reduced their brewing. And what we've done is that we've just decided, look, we know it's difficult, it's really tough. We need the support of consumers. I don't think consumers totally understand that every time they come to me or another brewery, it is a lifeline at the moment because 85% of the industry is closed down fundamentally. So we've launched things like our black IPA called Midnights, which we it's the first black IPA we've done for absolutely ever. Black IPAs amongst, again, the more discerning breweries have become, I wouldn't say in vogue is an exaggeration, but they've certainly become semi-fashionable again. And I think black IPAs are delicious, especially the way we've done it. We've made it sort of like more on West Coast style. So it has quite a high bitterness, which has been done on purpose. We're quite good as a brewery. Well, I think we're very good at it, actually, not just quite good. I will sing our praises. I think there's a lot of hype on East Coast style at the moment. So with New England IPAs, etc. And West Coast, to a certain extent, have not necessarily been left behind because you've got 1 or 2 big brands that have built their name on West Coast, but fundamentally, it's probably less fashionable West Coast. And so one thing that we've been doing is we launched the black IPA about 2 weeks ago. It's done really well so far. We're about to rebrew, which we never normally do. We never rebrew specials or limited releases, but we're making a change. We have a dipper called a West Coast dipper called Sapwood, which is absolutely delicious. Being honest with you, we brew a lot of it about whenever it was 3-4 months ago, 5 months ago. We were quite nervous because the trouble with this marketplace at the moment is that the pubs are closed. So there's no keg business, there's no wet sales, draft sales. So you're reliant on your bottles or your cans if you're a brewery. And so we had a lot of stock, being honest, of Sapwood. But it's absolutely flown. We're down to 6 cases left. That's all we've got left.
Wow.
So it's done incredibly well. And I will say it's probably the best, in my opinion, sort of like hypey commercial style beer. You know, it appeals to so many people, whether you're like you and I, maybe a bit more into different styles of beer, or whether you've just never even had a dipper before. So it's one of those sort of types of styles that I think is very appealing. So we've done incredibly well. So we're rebrewing Sapwood because of demand from a number of customers that want us to rebrew it. So we're going to basically do that. So that's quite a big thing for us because we never do it. Yeah. And then we've got a new sour coming out.
Amazing.
So I should probably just tell you it really because the time this gets out. So it's called Ribes, and it's a blackcurrant sour. Really strong branding. It's looking really cool. So I'm quite excited about that. That's going to be released next week. So I'm letting you into a little secret.
That's amazing. Wait to try it.
To be honest, I'm looking forward to try it. It's going to be canned on Friday, so we're looking forward to that. And then we are releasing this new dipper called Cloudburst, which is made with some very, very new, innovative US hops, which a lot of the hyped breweries have been after. We've managed to secure some of those, and we've basically brewed it I've been tasting it, and of course I'm bound to say this, aren't I, James? But trust me, it is really, really, really good. And I've been tasting it from Tank, and it's like, it's massive. It's just got so much melon flavour to it.
Wow.
And it's a style, even if I'm being honest, that I'm not totally familiar with, in the sense that I'm familiar with East Coast, obviously, but I'm not really familiar with these hops. I don't really understand them well enough. So one of our buyer who works for us, he's very much into what's on the market at the moment. So we managed to secure, and we bought a parcel of these hops at vast expense, and we have brewed this dipper. And yeah, so we're just very, very excited about the beer coming out. It's going to be, the branding is also, I'll be honest, branding looks fantastic. Our designer has created a really funky, edgy, but I think it's going to do really, so it'll be probably selling for about $5.75 a can. So it's not a cheap beer to make. It's a very expensive beer to make, but we're not profiteering. Trust me, I'm working on relatively tight margins on it, but we want people to try it. Because really it should be more like $6.50, to be honest, but we're selling it a little bit less. We want to get it out there.
I mean, on a consumer point of view, I'd be expecting to pay around that for a high quality craft beer. So I'm very much looking forward to trying that.
Well, so are we. So you asked what we've been doing, announcements. Well, the last little announcement is that we have every intention to open more tap rooms. Definitely. We really feel that we're quite good at it, and it's hard work, but we've got a lot of experience doing it these days. Obviously been doing it for a lot of years now, so we're probably going to be doing that. But the thing is, we want to get, this is the reason why we had these tap rooms open. This was the fundamental reasons, because it's not just about always promoting us, it's about promoting craft beer in general, because we do, stock, especially in our St Albans outlet, guest breweries that we rate, and we try and support other people because we know it's a tough business out there. Not everybody can be in Sainsbury's and Tesco's. It's tough. It's, the only minority tend to get into the multiples, and it's tough. So the tap rooms are a very good marketing tool for us, and it allows us to, this is a good thing about us, it allows us to do experimentation, to come up with things like black, because obviously if you produce black IPA in a kit our size, you're going to have a lot of cans. You've got to sell it somewhere. And you can't just rely on a market that's 85% shut. So I think we're being quite risque a little bit in carrying on brewing, being in it. And we're so far, touch wood, we've managed to get more of our beers out throughout the country to different people and a lot of new customers that we didn't know about. It's still been difficult. I will say this again, stress this again. It's been tough, but all things considered, I think we've done all right, and we just got to keep focused. And when we reopen, it should be really, hopefully, it should be really good for us when things reopen again.
Yeah, absolutely. And my local tap room is actually in Berkhamsted.
Yeah.
So very much looking
forward to there. Well, we've got some news there. I'll tell you this much, because what I've learned now, because you're a marketeer, what I have learned is that sometimes keeping secrets too secret is no point. Sometimes it's worth getting it out.
Yeah.
So we are making some changes to Berkhamsted.
Exciting.
Yeah. So we are doing some changes in Burco. We're just going through a planning application as we speak, and we just want to basically sort of not revitalize, because it's got a lot of loyalty, that store. It's just a case of moving it a little bit further up, making it a bit fresher. We've got some good ideas. Everything will be a bit neater, more presentable, inside and out. So we're quite excited about that, because we do like Burco. I think it's got a lot of potential. We just need to adapt for the market going forward, and that's what we're going to be doing. So we're not standing still.
I'll be watching keenly on that. Yeah. Well, look, I'm again conscious of time. Just very quickly before we round things up, just in terms of obviously, as we know, the actual tap rooms and bars themselves aren't open at the moment, but people can obviously head over to the Mad Squirrel Brew .co.uk website and order online for delivery.
You can also turn up here. You can come up to the brewery and you can buy. You don't need to book. So we've got 3 options of buying at the moment. You just come up here and you literally will just serve you. We've got we're perfectly legally able to stay open at the moment. I will be honest, we were sort of closed, but for various reasons I won't bore you with now, we've just decided to sort of reopen the actual shop so people can come here and just buy at the brewery itself. And then we do a click and collect service online, so you can nominate click and collect, so you can just order your beer and come and collect. And it's very simple. You literally order your beers, press click and collect, and you can just literally turn up like in the next 10 minutes. It doesn't matter.
Amazing.
So and then the simple online, and we are delivering nationwide. And round here, we're trying to use our own vehicles wherever possible to deliver. So we have that bit of a service element to consumers. So there's plenty of reasons to get beer from us. And we've got such a nice range at the moment with more beers coming out.
Greg, that's amazing. I'll certainly be taking full advantage of popping up and doing my own collection. So yes, that I think that sort of brings us to the end of time. If there was anything else you wanted to add in here, go ahead. But I think we've covered quite a lot, and I'm very keen to see what the developments are, in particular with my local Mad Squirrel tap room in Burco. So I know there's a lot of people I know around here that will be equally excited to hear that there's some plans in the works. But
well, I guess the last thing to say, James, is I mean, just while I've got this opportunity, is obviously, I appreciate you seeking us out and us having this interview. It's greatly appreciated, because I'm a great believer in these things anyway. But every consumer that supports any local business, I know this sounds a bit corny, but I mean, any local business is really important at the moment. I don't think necessarily people understand the implications of what's been happening with lots of different sectors. And so, for example, the supermarkets, let's be blunt, it's been Christmas every day for them. And a lot of independents have just been struggling. And so the brewery sector, any of the breweries, and I mean any of the breweries, I think, if people can just support local breweries wherever possible, then these businesses are going to be here. If they're not supported, like any business, they won't be here. Yeah. So that's my message out. We are honestly, I think we are pretty gracious as a brewery with people, when people turn up here. We are extremely appreciative of every sale, and I'm really sincerely mean that, because I understand that people can go elsewhere. Doesn't matter how good our beer is. We know, being blunt, I know we produce amazing beer, but sometimes producing an amazing product is not enough. You still need consumers to pass the word and get people to just support. And someone buying 6 cans when they may not normally do it is a lifeline for a lot of breweries, trust me.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with that. That's, for me, one of the most important things about having this blog and having these conversations is to celebrate in the independent and to support local business. So, yeah. Greg, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It's very exciting news. Can't wait to try the new releases and, of course, get down to the new Burco taproom site. So until next time, you can obviously keep up to date with me on any news and these releases coming out from Mad Squirrel on jimmybrews.com. But be sure to go to madsquirrelbrew.co.uk and get your beers delivered, click and collected if you're slightly more local to the site, and follow Mad Squirrel Brew on Facebook and Insta, which is an @Mad Squirrel Brew handle. So thanks for listening. And Greg, thanks again for your time today.
No problems. Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.